This game is beautiful. I physically cannot tell you just how much this game has made an impact on me in just a simple string of words, so let's bring it all back a second and let's start at the very beginning. It has been quite a while since I've made a video. So on the evening of the 27th of October 2022, I decided to browse Steam for a newly released indie game in the hopes that I could find one that I could make a video on and bring back the video essays to my channel. That's when I stumbled across a cute, cozy little game called Paradise Marsh. I loved the aesthetic and it drew me in, so I decided to buy it since it was pretty cheap. But what I didn't realise at the time is that this simple decision made me realise so much about where I am in life currently. After a quick install, I loaded up the game, and I drew my first star constellation in the sky. I quickly recognised that everything was pointing to the fact that we, the player, are in a dream, or something similar to a dream. The focus on the stars in the night sky, the almost ethereal atmosphere surrounding me, and the sound design to complement that, and the fact that literally a net materialises out of thin air, right in front of your eyes, in a bright, almost heavenly light. Even the passage of time here is something that isn't quite natural, something you would see in a dream. That first time that I watched the sun rise over the horizon, I immediately knew this game would be something different, something that I'd remember and love. You see, I'm a sucker for atmosphere, and the way the world came alive was a sharp contrast to what we had experienced up until this point. Now, nature was surrounding me, the sounds of water moving gently, the symphony of wildlife that calls this place home. Following these sounds leads you towards animals you can actually interact with and catch with your net, and on your journey between finding all these different animals greets you with all kinds of other objectives. One of the first things you may stumble across, even before catching any animals at all, are these little glass bottles of messages that are pretty cryptic and vague. This is just one of the game's plethora of different interactables, with others being packets of seeds to throw and plant little patches of flowers, fruit you can eat that has different effects, and most importantly, there's these monoliths that stand tall and dark, juxtaposing against the nature around them. But after starting my collection by collecting my first snail on a rock, I realised that my goal would actually be to collect all the species and fill out all their star constellations in the journal. So I actually never even touched these monoliths at first, although I almost wished I had. Either way, my goal was now clear, and I set out on my little adventure. Along the way, I found all kinds of things. Long abandoned windmills, birds that read out poetry to me, fields of sunflowers, and even other biomes and weather. When the sun set on my first in-game day of playing and the moon came out, I was actually quite surprised that the world didn't quite fall asleep, but simply the rest of the world woke up. Suddenly there were beautiful fireflies creating trails of light and groups of crickets chirping through the moonlit glades, and for once the night felt just as comfortable as the day. This wasn't just a fun little game anymore, it was a piece of art. Of course, it's not like games haven't done this in the past. The last game to make me feel like this was probably The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. But you see, that was 5.5 years ago now. And it got me thinking about the state of the gaming industry and all these remakes and sequels that are just pumped out and made to make more money. Which makes sense. You need to be able to do that to keep your company alive, but where's the passion? Where's the vision? I could talk about this all day, so maybe I should save it for another video, but it's been getting worse and worse recently. And this game is just such a breath of fresh air. You can just feel the passion in this. It's clear that the person behind this game has some real deep emotion tied to it. The first time that I left the initial biome that I spawned in, and I stepped into a gloomy, stormy, almost dead-looking forest, I thought I would actually begin to feel uneasy. But I didn't. The gentle rainfall and the animals that inhabited the areas proved that it was still the same on the inside, despite being different at a first glance. It's still alive, it's just alive in a different way, and a different set of animals and a different set of weather. Then more biomes appeared on the horizon. Harsh winter tundras, groves of cherry blossom trees with bridges stretching across the dense ponds, trash-filled marshes, and swamps with crimson trees, and even plains that are littered with long-forgotten man-made structures. It was nice to take a moment to admire my surroundings, skim some rocks across the water, let some lanterns fly into the air, and walk into rakes like a 20th century cartoon character. Or hell, even leveling up my dumpster diving game, preparing for Halloween, preparing for Christmas, and playing around with these shooting geysers that shoot me up into the air. Hell, you can even smack objects with your net to reveal creatures hiding inside, like a well or a pile of foliage. There's just so much life teeming in every single part of this world, and everything just feels so dynamic and alive. It's an amazing feeling to be wandering around here. I noticed something that I really appreciated not too far into my gameplay, and it's that the game doesn't hold your hand at all, really, and leaves you, the player, completely free to follow your own wonder and curiosity. Did you see something you want to check out? That's really cool, go for it. Have a look, it's probably something really cool, something you can interact with or at least admire. You can go in any direction you want and you don't even have to return to the point where you came from, because wherever you go there's something new. And at the same time it will provide you with the opportunities to do and see what you didn't before. You know, monoliths, they randomly pop up, so you never have to go back to one. I think I probably wandered for around almost 5 hours before I even touched a monolith, just doing everything there is in the game, seeing everything there is and exploring. You see, I'm a very curious person by nature, and a lot of fun memories growing up came from when I was a kid exploring these fields and forests with my friends, sword fighting with sticks we picked up off the woodland floor, and climbing trees, and walking along rivers. It's something I miss a lot, and to be fair, it is something I crave again. Just to be a kid, with fewer commitments, fewer responsibilities, more time to just be myself and be around my friends. Playing this made me feel like that again, and made me feel like I was able to feed those cravings, even if it was just a little bit. Whilst you're roaming this world that you are seemingly stuck in, you also won't really have to worry about eating or drinking, since there's plenty to consume, such as apples, lemons, different mushrooms, carrots, ice lollies, energy drinks, and more. They all have their own unique effects too, like a kind of Alice in Wonderland type thing. The apples give you speed, the lemons shrink you down to a smaller size, and the red mushrooms make you grow to a bigger size. The world has so many interactable objects, and I know I keep saying this, but there's mechanics you wouldn't necessarily know about until later when you watch someone else play through the game. I know I learned of some new things. After I played, I went onto Twitter and looked up the developer and saw them posting about the little things you can do, and I was like, I didn't know about that. That's really cool. There's so much detail just packed into this little bite-sized passion project, and it just feels so amazing. And this is what I was talking about earlier, the way that AAA games just don't do this anymore. The way things began to pop into existence is a pretty nice detail as well, as they literally pop in, like they stretch and bounce, and it's almost like it's because in this dreamscape that I am wandering here, the mind is filling in the blanks as I go, that I am in this one pocket of the world at all times, these little pockets of memories, and I'm just wandering aimlessly, trying to find my meaning in this place. And then I found more bottles, and the more I found, the deeper the meaning got and the more I actually started to understand. So, spoiler warning. From this point on, I will be talking about things that would be fairly large spoilers for the game and its narrative. So, if you feel like you might actually want to play this game and try it for yourself, then please just go do that instead. Because trust me, it's something you are definitely going to want to experience just by yourself. You ready? Good. Let's dive into it then. The first message that you initially pick up talks about how it all feels like a dream. How this place is familiar and yet at the same time something else entirely. Being trapped here, not being able to go back to where you once was, not being able to return. What sells this idea even further of it all being a dream is the fact that when you hold down the escape button, your eyes start to close. And if you hold it for long enough, you drift off to sleep, returning to the main menu full of stars once again, but it is more than just a dream. As the messages go on, you start to realize that it's an analogy for someone being lost, trying to find their way through this world. Like the broken compass mentioned in the second message. The theme of lacking any sense of direction is very strong at the beginning here. There's a desperation to know the direction that you're supposed to go, the path to take, where you're supposed to end up. The monoliths are then mentioned, and the draw they have on this messenger, that they crave the uncanny familiarity of it, and how it keeps slipping from them, out of their grasp. The theme of dreams resurfaces along the way, and even hints to the fact that this messenger doesn't understand who they are, what they're doing, who they once was, and that the past is a long forgotten memory. It's almost like they're struggling with some kind of amnesia, as they often talk about a familiar feeling that they just can't quite pin down. Something that they know, something that they've experienced, and they just can't quite get it in their head. By the time I got to the fifth message, the deeper meanings and the emotion behind them grew and grew. The messenger talks about how along the journey they are confronted with a frozen river that they attempt to cross by walking over it, only to fall in and be dragged under and begin drowning in the cold, dark, icy water, and then only to escape within a hair of their life. And that's when everything returned to them, their memories, their emotions, who they are, why they're here, what they're looking for. Of course, this most likely represents the emotional journey of people who feel like they're lost and drowning in their emotions and their feelings, and people who have lost their way and vision and life in the real world. Being in a position like that, it changes people. It affects you deeply to the point where you really would feel like all it would take is one step and you'd sink. But the important part is that if you do, you must try to keep your head above the water. To never give up. The events that are going down in this world are echoing the experiences of people in real life, and they're hard to push through, and it's even harder to do it alone. For people who have been through this, it's important to guide others, to help them find their way again, so they don't hold on to the past as if that's all there is. That they don't fear the future, but embrace it. Now, I might be wrong on this, but my interpretation of this story is that the messages you are reading, they do belong to someone else, but they also belong to you. The way they talked about others following in their footsteps exactly, it's a metaphor for you. How you are following their journey in this game. But it doesn't stay this way. You do follow them, but you do begin making your own destiny and meeting people who are shaping your future along the way and giving you a purpose. Throughout the game, you actually end up meeting a fair amount of characters. They're not human, but they seemingly understand what it is to be human. Perhaps they're even representations of actual human people who have walked the path that you're walking. Regardless, the first ones you'll likely come across are the birds. When I first met one, I smacked it round the face with my net, not realizing that you cannot catch it at all. They read out poetry to you, and each bird actually has its own personality. See, I saw them as guides, sharing advice through their carefully crafted words. And again, I could be wrong, but this game does seem to be something that is heavily up to the player's interpretation. And poetry seems to be a very strong recurring theme in this. Another thing I noticed was that each page of my personal bestiary had some notes on the creatures, explaining their personalities and their behaviours. Little did I know that later on these creatures actually ended up having personalities themselves. Little did I know that later on this would actually reflect their actual human personalities, if that makes sense. You see, as you catch these creatures, you need to collect a certain amount of each one to fill in their star constellation in the journal. I collected every single one before I touched the monolith, but when I finally did, it was something beautiful. All the creatures were released into the sky as stars, and the entire sky lit up so beautifully. The constellations all appearing at once like some kind of ethereal firework display. Each star represents a fragment of each creature. Each creature has its own specific conversation with you as well that do correlate to the personalities and notes in the journal. For instance, the bee was a hard worker, loyal to its queen. The beetle had a superiority and god complex. The butterfly was a romantic poet looking for love with the cricket. The cricket was a conspiracy theorist. The dragonfly was a brave knight and a hero. The firefly disguised manipulation with thinly veiled innocence. The frog was a positive, friendly comedian. The moth was knowledgeable and kept track of information. The snail was pessimistic, defeatist, and solitary. The spider was a French hunter, hungry for prey. The tadpole was seemingly young, talking in text-style speech, but overall very positive and chill. And finally, the toad was a teacher and a master. He had wisdom to share. The majority of these creatures, again, acted as guides. People to talk to and confer with and help you feel less alone and give you purpose in this game. Some of them even changed their tone later on. Like the snail, actually looking towards the bright side for once. A detail I really liked was that the moth actually kept track of your playtime, the stars you've restored and how many steps you've taken. As someone who tends to be a bit of a completionist and perfectionist, this was actually a really nice feature. I ended up getting all the achievements, such as eating a different funny looking mushroom and getting high to the point where I literally started levitating and seeing funky visuals. There's also one for scoring a soccer ball into a shopping cart as if it's a goal. One for walking 5 miles overall. One for picking a daisy to predict your romantic future, much like the butterfly did for the cricket. One for building 3 snowmen. Another for bouncing on objects 3 times across the land without touching the ground. And my favourite one was finding little puzzles where you pick items up with your net in specific areas and are rewarded with an instrument. Being awarded the achievement upon collecting them all. This game is so full to the brim of things to do, and even though it is ultimately a short story with fun mechanics, it's impactful and it's genuinely fun, and it was worth every single penny to me. One of the things I really want to talk about the most in this game is what happens when you restore every last star, when you beat the game, per se. The monoliths begin glowing, even brighter than before, and upon touching it, you yourself become part of the stars. You end up in this afterlife of sorts, surrounded by the creatures you helped restore and bring back to life, in a more spiritual sense anyway, and have one last conversation with them all. You approach a bench, and you finally rest. This game is ultimately an analogy for accepting what comes next. Whether it be moving on from a broken relationship, events that cause trauma, or even death. But most importantly, it's about learning to let go, move on, try to look towards the future. In the end, it's about facing yourself. Then, the game ends. And it genuinely made me shed a tear. But what I didn't mention is that there is a secret. Before you approach the bench, if you look behind you and up into the sky, there is a code. It's unique to each playthrough, so mine likely won't be the same as yours. But you should note it down. After re-entering the world, you'll notice that all the creatures are back and you can catch them endlessly again. But that's not why we're back. You see, you need to locate a payphone in the biome that's covered in litter, and enter the number that was in the sky earlier. The phone dials, and someone picks up. It's a message from the creator of the game, giving one last little message to tell you that things will be okay, and that the future is ultimately yours to make what you will out of it. This broke me. I bawled my eyes out at this point. It wasn't just a tear to be shed, it was full-on crying. It was everything I needed to hear right now. I'm going for a pretty major change in my life that I really, really wished didn't have to happen. But it does, and I'm facing it. I don't feel like going into the details of it right now, but this game and the message it delivered was exactly what I needed. So to those who worked on this game, to the lead developer, I cannot thank you enough. You have moved me in a way that no game or even any piece of media has done in a long, long time. This game told me that the past is hard to move through, but the future is still yours to write. That this isn't the end of my story, only a chapter. And you know what? It's pretty damn beautiful. So this story, this message, this game is beautiful. Thank you so much for watching. I want to do a lot more of this, and maybe not so deep and personal, but I just want to cover more indie games, stuff that doesn't really get as noticed as I think it probably should, so I really, really want to do more. And if you want to see more, then please consider subscribing, liking, and sharing this video around, because it means everything. So once again, I want to say thank you for watching all the way through the video. It means a lot. This game was very personal to me, and I really hope to see you again soon. So check out the game in the description and the social media pages for the developer and the game itself, and maybe even consider checking out my own game development Twitter account. I mean, the reason why I'm even so interested in all of this is because I am myself a game developer. Check them out, check out my Twitter, consider subscribing, and I will see you all around. Thank you. Goodbye.